Hey, this is Steve Stine, and today I'm actually at Sweetwater in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I'm going to be doing some lessons here. And what I want to talk to you about today are 3 concepts to try and make your solos a little more creative. Now, before I get started, what I want you to understand is it's really important that you notice the importance of studying your scales and working on your technique and all of those different kinds of things. This isn't going to be a substitute for that. This is just what you're going to add on top of that. So what happens a lot of times when we start learning how to play, we learn how to play a position, for instance, on the guitar, whether it's pentatonic or diatonic or whatever it might be. And we tend to play them up and down all the time. So you start learning how to play, let's say we do a pentatonic, and I'll just do this in E for now. So I'm doing a minor pentatonic. And oftentimes what happens is you just play the scale up and down. So we start listening to the backing track or whatever it is that we're trying to solo over. And we can get some really cool licks by doing that, by moving up and down. But what I want to show you today is how to try and get a little more creative with that so your solos sound a little more interesting and they feel a little more interesting, which always helps with your confidence level. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about what I call an overlap. Now, in theory, we talk about things like intervals, and we talk about arpeggios and different things like that. And that really is what we're talking about today. The difference is we're not really basing it on anything absolute. So this first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about overlapping. And what it really is very similar to an interval, or even if you think about it as string skipping, different things like that. So let's say, for instance, I was going to take an E minor or G major scale. So I did this. Now, instead of just playing it up and down like that, I start thinking about how to overlap those notes in a more unique way. To try and make it sound a little more interesting. Okay? Now we're gonna expand from this, but let's just start with that idea. So if I took the whole position that I'm playing here, okay? So I'm playing more of an E minor idea here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try and move around. Again, it's intervallic because I'm not trying to play everything sequential. Again, that's always the problem, is we tend to play everything just up and down. So I'm trying to figure out creatively, not methodically. I'm not trying to do thirds and fourths and things like that. I'm just trying to figure out how to move around more interestingly for me and for someone who would be listening to me. Now, if I take that idea and I start trying to put a direction to it, let's say I'm playing an E minor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and direct my movements toward the note E. So at the end, I try and land on an E or whatever it is I might be looking for, right? If you know your theory and you know your notes on your guitar, you might be looking for a third or a fifth or something like that. But right now, I'll just use E as my example. So overlapping, what you're doing is trying to think, instead of going and just playing that, which is fine, what you want to do is start thinking about how to make something a little more interesting. Now, I'm going to put all of these 3 ideas that I'm going to tell you about, I'm going to put them together as I keep going, and then you'll kind of see what I'm talking about. So it doesn't matter where you are on the fretboard as you're trying to approach this overlap idea. Let's say you're down here. So again, same principle. What I'm trying to do is think about overlapping. And I always think of it almost like Eric Johnson or Andy Timmons or players like that that use a lot of this kind of movement in their playing. So the second thing that we're going to do now is we're going to talk about adding in arpeggios. But instead of thinking of them as arpeggios, because again, there's nothing wrong with arpeggios, needless to say. But when we think about arpeggios, we hear the word E minor and then we think, okay, we need to play E, G, and B, which is absolutely valid, okay? But let's say we're coming from an angle that we're not thinking of it in theory, because maybe you don't know all the notes on your fretboard and maybe you don't know all your theory. So what we're going to do is, instead of thinking of it as an arpeggio, we're just going to think of it more as cutting across the strings. Okay? So normally, if I wanted to play an E minor arpeggio, I might do something like this. And right there, I'm playing E, G, and B. Okay? And I can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. But let's take it a step further and think, well, what else could we do? Maybe we don't know our theory, maybe we don't know all our arpeggios, or maybe we just want to try and get more creative. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this idea that I just played here, just a little kind of overlapping idea, and now I'm going to tie this cutting idea where I'm cutting across the strings onto this. So I'm going to go like this. And you'll notice that when I'm playing there, it actually looks like the E minor, but I'm up here, and I'm actually on B. Now, right now, it doesn't make any difference. It's going to sound just fine. So I've got... Okay? Here's another idea. Let's take that same idea, but this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to move back to the 12th fret of the 5th string, which is A, and I'm going to play that same shape again. Now I could move that up and play the same notes again in 1 octave higher, which would be giving me an A minor arpeggio. But again, I don't care about that right now. What I'm more concerned with is how do things sound. And that's really important. And always remember, I'm not using a backing track right now. But as you practice these sorts of things, you definitely want to be trying to practice over something that you can hear. Because as I'm playing, I'm giving you ideas on different things, and hopefully you're going to find something useful in here. But the real test is playing it over something that you can hear, something that you're working against. Okay? So as I'm playing this A minor, we have to remember the chord that might be played is an A minor. The chord that's playing underneath me might actually be E minor, which is kind of what I'm trying to explain to you. So as I'm doing this A minor, instead of doing the full A minor like that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move from here and I'm going to move into a B minor arpeggio. And again, I'm going to keep reminding you of this. It doesn't matter whether you know what these are or not. What I want you to think about is how I'm thinking about cutting across the strings. And then I'm assessing, in my mind, I'm thinking about what does it sound like as I'm playing. And then at the end, I'm going up to the 17th fret, or excuse me, the 19th fret of my first string. So I'm landing or emphasizing something that's going to work over that E minor chord. So if you think about it, if I was playing this whole thing over E, and then I move down, okay, so now I'm going to put that whole thing together for you so you can hear what it sounds like and you can watch what I'm doing. And all of a sudden, your solos don't just sound like you're playing up and down, okay? So you might do some sort of lick or pattern that is based off moving sequentially up and down this way, but then when you get done with that, you try and move into something else. Now, there's no rhyme or reason to the order of these things. It's just something different to think about, okay? So now we're going to move on to the third idea, which is what I call the squeeze, which is a really stupid word, but it's all I have right now, okay? So what I'm doing here is I'm taking the same scale, this E minor or G major, however you're looking at it, and what I'm going to think about is moving across the guitar this way, but instead of playing 2 notes on every string or 3 notes on every string or whatever it is that you're doing, I'm trying to think about making the distances different as I move across the strings this way. So let's say, for instance, instead of just playing E minor like this, what I'm going to do is take that same scale, but I'm going to start changing the distances on each string by expanding and contracting the notes. And let me show you what I mean. So what I'm doing right there is I'm playing 5-7, and then I'm playing 5-9. Okay, so I'm jumping. You'll see the first one I'm playing is smaller, and then the next string is actually bigger. Now, I don't have to go small and then big and then small and then big. I can do whatever I want. But the point is that I'm changing, again, the distances, so it's making the intervals larger and smaller. I'm skipping things instead of just playing everything sequentially. So I'm playing 5-7, 5-9, 5-9, and then I'm moving up and playing 7-8 and 7-10. Now, I could do this a million different ways, but that's just a really common way for me to play. So I'll do it again for you. Now, when I get done, I might move into another idea, right? So what I would do, a very common thing for me to do, would go up to the 12 and play 12-8. I'm going to do both of those, 12-8. And then I might do one of these cuts again, where I move this way. And all of a sudden you start getting some really interesting things. Now, in order to do any of this, needless to say, you've got to have better knowledge of your fretboard. You've got to be able to move around. So if you're learning how to play pentatonic or diatonic or whatever it might be, and you only know one position on the guitar, this becomes very difficult because you don't have a lot to work with. So what I would suggest to you is really start learning how to play 2 or even 3 positions and start learning how to see things more in this direction. Okay? That way you're not just stuck always playing the same thing. Because I get a lot of players all the time that are telling me they get tired of playing the same thing. They get frustrated because every time they grab the guitar, they do the same thing. And the trick is you have to start thinking about the fretboard differently. So you'll see kind of the way I think about it is I've got movement going this direction, I've got movement going this direction, and then I also think about cutting across the strings in various ways this way. So if I've got something playing, again, let's just say it's E, I might think about moving this way. Or I'm using the sequential ideas. Or I'm using one of these other 3 kinds of techniques that we've been talking about. So hopefully that helps you a little bit. I want to thank Sweetwater for allowing me to do this. And if you ever get a chance, please obviously go to them online. But if you ever get a chance to go to Fort Wayne and check out Sweetwater, I would highly recommend it. So take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Hey, this is Steve Stine from Guitar Zoom. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please do me a favor, like it and share it. And also make sure that you subscribe to this channel so you're always notified when I release new videos.